Dear one, you've arrived here carrying things you may not even see. Thoughts that linger, feelings left unspoken, moments that never found a place to rest. This space is different. Here there is no rush, no expectation, no judgment. Only the quiet breath, the soft rhythm of being, and the permission to gently let go. Tonight, we'll walk through a story, not to find answers, but to remember what's already within you. Let the sounds guide you inward. Let the stillness meet you where you are. And let the weight you carry begin to loosen. There is a story waiting, and you don't need to do anything but listen. There was once a quiet monastery tucked within the folds of a cedar-covered mountain, where silence was not enforced, it was simply honored. The trees stood like monks themselves, tall and unmoving. The breeze that rustled through their branches did not rush. It lingered, as if to listen. Among the students there was a young monk named Kiko, whose heart was always full, too full. Kiko was diligent. He rose before the bell. He swept the temple paths clean until the stone showed beneath the dust. He copied the sutras until his wrists ached. And yet, despite his devotion, peace always seemed just out of reach. His mind never rested. Each morning during tea, while the others drank in silence, Kiko's thoughts ran wild. He worried over past mistakes. He replayed conversations. He carried memories like stones, tucked into his robe, invisible but heavy. And though his hands were busy with service, his heart was cluttered. One morning, after failing to calm his mind during meditation for the 100th time, Kiko approached the master, an old monk who had long stopped speaking unless silence itself asked him to. Kiko bowed deeply and said, "Master, why do I feel so burdened? I study the teachings, I follow the precepts, but inside I feel noisy." The master nodded once and gestured toward the garden. "Come," he said, walking slowly with a wooden cane that never seemed to touch the ground. They stopped beside a stone bench where a small table held 2 cups and a clay pot of tea. The master lifted the pot and poured, and poured, and poured. The tea rose to the brim, then spilled over the edge. It soaked the table. It ran in little rivers down to the gravel below. Kiko stared, unsure. Still, the master poured. "Stop," Kiko said at last. "The cup is full. It can't hold anymore." The master paused, looked at him, and smiled faintly. "Exactly." Then he set the pot down, wiped the table with its sleeve, and walked away. Kiko sat, stunned. He looked down at the cup, now cooling in a shallow pool of tea. He understood, and yet not fully. The next morning, Kiko returned to the garden where the master had poured the tea. The table was dry, the cups were gone. But in his mind, the image of the overflowing cup would not leave him. He sat on the stone bench and closed his eyes, listening not to the wind, but to his own mind. And there it was, the chatter. Regret from a word spoken harshly to a friend 2 years ago, anxiety about whether his practice was good enough, the echo of his father's disappointment from childhood, unfinished questions about enlightenment, about death, about his own worth. It was like walking through a house where every room was filled to the ceiling, dusty memories, tangled expectations, old voices, and emotional clutter stacked high. "I've become a collector," he whispered to himself. "A collector of everything I never let go." That afternoon, he returned to the master and bowed again. "The cup is full because I keep pouring," Kiko said. "But what am I supposed to do with all that's already inside?" The master looked up from a tray of lotus seeds he was sorting. "You do not empty a room by shouting at it," he said. "You sit quietly and begin with what's nearest to the door." Kiko blinks. "I don't understand." The master gestured toward the monastery storeroom and handed him a large empty basket. "Begin there," he said. Confused, Kiko obeyed. He opened the storeroom door. It was dark and cluttered with the years of forgotten tools, robes, broken bowls, and scrolls too torn to read. At first, he wanted to organize it, to create order, but the master had said to begin with what was nearest. So he picked up an old sandal, then a cracked jar, then a bent ladle. One by one, he examined each thing. Some he returned to a shelf, some he brought to the fire. He worked slowly, he breathed gently, and as he cleaned the physical space, something inside him shifted. He was not fixing, not rushing, not forcing. He was simply witnessing and choosing. After 3 days, the storeroom was nearly empty, but more than that, Kiko's chest felt lighter. His breath came easier. His thoughts had more space between them. He returned to the master. "I think I understand now," Kiko said. "It's not about throwing everything away, but about seeing what no longer serves." The master smiled without looking up. "That is the beginning," he said. "Now the real work can begin." The morning mist hung low as Kiko stepped into the meditation hall. But today, he didn't sit. He bowed once to the altar and turned instead toward a smaller, seldom used room tucked behind a sliding paper screen. It was known simply as the Hall of Echoes, though most monks avoided it. It was a room meant not for prayer or posture, but for reflection, for facing what stirred in silence. The master had pointed him there without a word, only a gesture and a steady gaze. So Kiko entered. The room was plain, a single cushion, a candle, and a cracked mirror resting on the floor. But as he knelt down, something unfamiliar happened. Tears welled up in his eyes. Not from sadness, not even from joy, but from the sudden awareness that he had never made space for himself, his full self, to simply be seen. He sat, breathing slowly, and looked into the mirror. And there, in the candle's soft flicker, he saw not a monk, not a student, but a child. The boy who had tried so hard to please. The boy who carried every silence as rejection. The boy who learned to smile even when he was hurting. Kiko closed his eyes. He let the image dissolve, not to forget it, but to embrace it. And in the stillness that followed, memories came not in torrents, but in gentle drips. The day his mother left without goodbye. The time he failed his first teaching and was told he lacked clarity. The time he felt joy but smothered it because it felt inappropriate. He didn't judge these moments. He didn't cling to them either. He just sat like a quiet witness to the weather of his own soul. Sometimes the candlelight danced. Sometimes his hands trembled. But the room held him. The silence did not accuse. It listened. And that night, for the first time in many years, Kiko slept without dreams. Not because the mind was empty, but because it was at peace. In the early hours, when the sky blushed with pale gold, Kiko rose and stepped into the monastery garden. He had passed it many times before, hurrying from one task to another, but this morning he walked with no destination, only presence. The ground was damp. Fallen leaves from seasons past clung to the earth. Some monks called this part of the grounds the forgotten corner. But Kiko saw it differently now. He found a rake and began to gently clear the soil, not with force, but care. Each pull of the rake was like a breath in and out, in and out. As he worked, he found hidden roots, crumbling petals, and even tiny new shoots pushing up through the decay. It reminded him of the clutter in his mind, how thoughts pile up, beliefs harden, pain grows moss, and yet, beneath it all, something new is always waiting. A soft voice stirred within him. You do not heal by erasing the past, it seemed to say. You heal by making space for what's underneath to grow. He stopped. He let that truth settle in his bones. The garden, like his mind, didn't need to be controlled. It needed to be seen, tended to, honored. That afternoon, the master approached. You've stopped asking how to let go, he observed. Kiko smiled. Because I've started practicing. The master nodded. Then you've learned the difference between emptying and releasing. Kiko furrowed his brow. Aren't they the same? The master shook his head. Emptying is resistance. It wants silence by force. Releasing is wisdom. It allows silence to come naturally. Kiko looked down at his dirt-covered hands and finally understood. Letting go wasn't about getting rid of pain. It was about creating enough space inside for peace to return. Evening came, and with it, a hush settled over the temple. Monks moved like shadows through the corridors, robes whispering against the wood. Kiko remained seated beneath the old pine tree by the southern gate, the one they called the listening tree. He had raked the garden. He had sat with his past. He had even wept into the mirror and let his breath carry old memories like leaves in the stream. But there was one feeling he hadn't yet named, a heaviness that lived not in his mind but his chest. Quiet, patient, always there. It was the sense of needing to be something for others, of performing calm instead of feeling it. It was the last stone in his bowl. A monk passed and paused at his side. "Still sitting?" he asked. Kiko nodded. The monk looked at him kindly and said, "Perhaps the final letting go isn't from the things that hurt us, but from the versions of ourselves that we no longer need to protect." He left Kiko with those words. Alone now, Kiko placed his palms together. He whispered to the wind, as if to that child's self, the performer, the seeker, "You don't have to hold it all anymore." And in that moment, he imagined his inner bowl, once full of broken things, quietly tipping, not spilling, just offering. And the last stone, the heaviest one, slid out with a soft sound. No struggle, no drama, just surrender. Kiko inhaled, exhaled, and felt something inside him that had been clenched for decades finally unfold. Not into a solution, but into peace. That night, no one saw him walk back to his room. The moon was too high, the temple too quiet. But if anyone had watched, they would have seen a man carrying nothing and glowing with everything. You've traveled now with Kiko, through temples and teachings, through silence and soil, through the weight of what he carried and the relief of what he let go. But perhaps you see now, this wasn't only Kiko's story, it was yours. We all walk with bowls too full, filled with old wounds we've memorized, identities we cling to, emotions we were never taught how to release. We carry stories not because they are true, but because we forgot we could set them down. And yet the invitation is always there, to pause, to breathe, to look into the bowl we filled, not with judgment, but with curiosity, and to ask gently, is it time to empty this? Not for the sake of absence, but to make room for peace. In this stillness, you may find there is nothing to prove, nothing to fix, only the quiet grace of being. So take this breath. Feel the silence stretch like warm light across your chest. Let the story settle into the soft corners of your spirit. And if anything within you has softened, loosened, or sighed, Let that be enough. You are not what you hold. You are the space that holds it. Let your bowl be light. Let your night be kind. And let this moment be the beginning of rest.